American gasoline prices have gotten so high recently, but have you ever wondered how they've gotten this high? The price of a barrel of oil in the early 2010s was around $100 to $110, the same as it is today, but the prices at the pump these days are much higher today than they were back then.
I pay $175 to fill up this car.
That was half a tank. A little more than $64 for half a tank.
To understand how gas prices got so high in the United States, we need to do a deeper dive into how the raw material, oil, which gets pumped out of the ground, becomes gasoline. The truth is, there's a lot more that goes into the price of gas than just the price of a single barrel of oil. If we look at the entire supply chain of gas in America, it's a lot more complex than you might think. The American gas industry is often misunderstood and many don't know how it actually works. In today's video, we're gonna go through the entire supply chain and analyze where the biggest increase in costs are, especially as of recent. And then a little later on in this video, we'll actually talk about the geopolitical factors that go into gasoline, as well as if the President of the United States himself has any direct influence when it comes to controlling gas prices. It might surprise you to know that gas prices aren't random, and we can break down exactly what's causing the increase in our prices today. The supply chain starts at the top with the production of oil and gas at the wells, mostly by drilling deep into the earth on a body of land or water. The oil is then pumped out of the earth and transported downstream to storage and refinery facilities, either through crude oil tankers or a pipeline built deep beneath the ground. The refineries will then take the crude oil, refine it, and then distribute it across the country for its different use cases, and those use cases can include jet fuel, diesel, gas for cooking, or just plain old gasoline for cars. Refining the crude oil is a large part of the cost of gasoline. The actual process of refining involves the crude oil being heated by a furnace, and once heated, the liquids and vapors enter a process of distillation. Distillation separates the liquids and vapors into different streams based on their boiling points. Now, I don't have a PhD in chemistry or science, but what we basically need to know is that this process of refinement allows crude oil to be turned into finished products like gas, diesel, asphalt, and solvents. The standard measurement for a barrel of crude oil internationally is 42 gallons. Every barrel of crude oil can be turned into several products, and how a barrel of crude oil is broken down really surprised me. 8% will be turned into gases like propane and butane. 49% will be turned into gasoline. 32% will be turned into kerosene, jet fuel, or diesel, and 11% of the barrel can be converted into specialty products like asphalt or heavy fuel oil. That means every barrel of crude oil, which is 42 gallons, roughly half, or 19 to 20 gallons, can be converted into gasoline. If you think about the fuel tank of most cars, they have a fuel capacity of 20 to 24 gallons, so to fill up your car would take roughly 1 barrel of refined crude oil. In terms of refining costs, the cost to refine crude oil has been set to between 40 and 70 cents per gallon. Add 25 cents to ship it from the refinery to the gas station, and in addition, you'll also have to pay taxes of around 18 cents at the federal level per gallon and between 20 and 70 cents at the state level depending on your state. California, for example, has the highest state gas taxes in the country at 62 cents. No wonder everyone over there is freaking out. If you add up all those costs, all those only account for around $1.20 to $1.30. That means the bulk of your fuel costs come from somewhere other than the cost of refining. The price of crude oil is largely driven by supply and demand on the international market. The third factor it's driven by, surprise, surprise, is geopolitics, which we're going to talk about later in this video. If we take a look at this pie chart, we can see that the United States is the single country that produces most of the world's oil, followed by Saudi Arabia and Russia. In terms of consumption, the United States also consumes 20% of the world's oil supply, and if you remember from the previous graphic, only produces 18%. That means the US has a net deficit of oil and needs to import the remainder from surrounding countries. In comparison, you'll see that Saudi Arabia produces 12% of the world's oil, or even more as of 2022, and they only consume less than 3% of the world's oil supply. That results in a surplus for them, and that is hence the reason why they sell most of it. The US imports oil from surrounding countries such as Canada and Mexico, and the breakdown is as follows. What I found intriguing is that the United States actually imports a majority of their oil from guess who? Our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, and only a small percentage of the rest of the oil is coming from places such as Russia and Saudi Arabia. The price of a barrel of oil has been fluctuating on the global market, but as of July 2022 hovers around the $110 mark. One of the organizations organizations that controls and influences the supply of oil is OPEC. OPEC stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and is comprised of 15 member countries, namely large oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, and other countries such as Venezuela, Iraq, Nigeria, and the Congo. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, or EIA, quote, at the beginning of 2020, OPEC members controlled about 71% of the total world crude oil reserve, and they accounted for 36% of the total world crude oil production in 2020. So yeah, a lot of your oil is being controlled by a modern-day monopoly or legal cartel. In other words, it's hard for the US alone to influence the price of oil, as there are many other factors outside of the US's control when it comes to the price of oil. Another reason for the price volatility was, if you'll remember, back in 2020, the pandemic started. Many countries were locked down to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. As a result of the lockdowns, global demand for oil plummeted instantly. In response to this reduction of demand, OPEC also decided to reduce its production of oil to match that demand. There was then a weird phenomenon back in 2020 never seen before in the oil industry. The price of a barrel of oil actually settled at a negative price. That's right, negative $37.63 per barrel on April 20th, 2020. In other words, because of so much inventory, technically an oil producer would have paid you $37.63 to take the excess inventory off of their hands. Quote, oil storage was filling up quickly, forcing oil tankers to become floating storage. But even at negative $37 a barrel, gas in America was still priced at $1.82 per gallon. Today, the prices of crude oil hover around $110 per barrel, and gas is close to $5 a gallon nationally. But back in 2011 to 2014, the price of crude oil also hovered around the $110 per barrel range, but gas nationally was around $3.44. So, what is with this discrepancy? As of today, there's really not the strongest correlation of crude oil prices and the price of a gallon of gas. A large reason why the price of gas in 2022 is higher now than compared to the early 2010s is that the cost of refining has gone way up due to the chain of events that occurred after COVID. So this is the time for the really interesting part. Refining capacity in the United States is about 1 million barrels a day below what it was prior to the pandemic. In fact, the number of total operating refineries has steadily decreased since 2017 from 141 in the United States to 130 as of today. That may not seem like a large decrease, and even though the decrease is only around 7% in capacity, that actually has huge implications for the price of refining and subsequently the price of a gallon of gas at the pump. So why are refineries closing? Well, back in 2020 when the pandemic hit, the demand for oil dried up. Refineries took a big financial hit when the price of gasoline plummeted back then, and thus some refineries closed for good since they were unprofitable. In addition, 2 refineries closed due to unrelated reasons. For example, a Philadelphia-based refinery that was one of the largest in the country closed due to a fire and explosions in 2019. And in Louisiana, a refinery was destroyed by Hurricane Ida in 2021. So there are fewer refineries now, and the cost to refine has shot up. In doing research, the refining industry measures refining margins using a calculation called the 3-2-1 crack spread. That's a funny name, I know. For every 3 barrels of crude oil the refinery processes, it will make 2 barrels of gasoline and 1 barrel of distillate fuel such as diesel or jet fuel. 3, 2, 1. A crack spread is the difference between the purchase price of crude oil and the selling price of the finished products. In our case, that's the cost of 3 barrels of crude oil versus the combined selling price of 2 barrels of gasoline plus 1 barrel of diesel. From 1985 to 2021, the crack spread averaged around $10.50 per barrel. Between 2004 and 2008, the best time for refining, the crack spread still never went above $30. However, in 2022, the crack spread jumped to a record high of over $60 and currently still sits at around $50 to $55. This is 5 times higher than the average from 1985 to 2021, and that's not the only problem. Another issue adding to this ailing problem is the fact that no one wants to build new refineries. It takes a lot of money and time to build a refinery, and increasingly investors are not wanting to see companies pour money into the oil industry, especially as the country and many other Western countries are trying to pivot to more sustainable methods of energy, including wind, solar, and and electric. The president has even stated he wants a future in renewables, especially with climate change issues looming. More on the president at the end of this video, but another reason for higher costs of gas right now are indeed geopolitics. As a result of the Ukraine and Russia war starting up in late February, there have been economic sanctions and embargoes imposed on Russian oil. Russia produces around 11% of the world's oil, and since that supply has been constrained, it is having a huge impact on the price of oil internationally. As you can see with this graph, right when the war broke out on February 24th, the price of a gallon of gas and the price of a barrel of oil immediately skyrocketed in the weeks to come. According to this Washington Post article, quote, Europe in particular relied on Russian refineries for a significant chunk of its diesel imports, and now the flow has dried. Europe not only needs to find extra crude to produce the diesel and other fuels it's not buying from Russia, but crucially, it needs the refining capacity to do so too. It's a double blow. Oil traders estimate that Russia has shut down 1.3 to 1.5 million barrels a day of refining capacity as the result of these self-sanctions. As these supply issues developed, many people in America were left wondering about a key oil project that was canceled as of 2021. President Biden took office in early January 2021. A key question many people have is, does the president's policies, including the cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline, have anything to do with the problem that we're facing today? For those of you that don't know, the Keystone Pipeline is a highly debated oil pipeline project that President Biden denied a key permit for at the start of his term. It was a pipeline that was proposed in order to transport fossil fuels from above the Canadian border to Steel City, Nebraska, where it would then be further distributed in the United States. It was expected to transport 830,000 barrels of fossil fuels from the province of Alberta, Canada, per day to refineries. Proponents of the pipeline wanted to increase our oil supply, while the opponents of the Keystone Pipeline cited its high environmental costs. Now, on this channel, we don't want to get into politics, so we will stay away from the debate of whether or not it should have been constructed, but the key question we should be asking ourselves is if the increased amount of fossil fuels coming in from the Keystone Pipeline would have alleviated gas prices. As far as the research for this video goes, it seems that as of today in 2022, the key factor in driving up gas prices is the cost to refine, which is being driven upward due to a demand and a dearth or lack of refineries. The pure oil refiners are quietly enjoying record high profit margins, and they have no plans of lowering their margins. I mean, if you owned a factory, the situation that the world finds itself in is one that is of benefit to you. So why would you bring your margins down, especially after you probably took huge losses in 2020 and 2021? Another problem is that investors don't want to jump into that sector, and more refineries aren't being built because of the fear that the profits are going to be short-lived because of the pivot to sustainable energy in the future. So, does the president have any power over gas prices? This was another common question I ran into when researching this topic. It would help to take a look back at the prior 4 presidents and see how gas prices changed before and after their terms. Using EIA numbers, we found that Bill Clinton left office in 2001 with gas prices at 39 cents higher than when he was sworn in earlier in 1993. George W. Bush left office with gas prices at 39 cents higher per gallon in 2009 than 8 years earlier. Obama left office with gas prices 49 cents higher than the 8 years earlier before that. And Donald Trump had gas prices climb 6 cents during his time in office of 4 years. So it does seem like Trump was a mild success story here, keeping gas prices relatively flat during his tenure. Had he won a second term, would the story be different today if he were to inherit the political landscape that we're in? We'll actually never know. According to an energy economist at MIT, quote, he, the president, has no real effect on world oil prices. And that, quote, even the things Biden has already done and suggested are short-term, marginal impacts on the price of gasoline. It does seem like the price of oil is heavily influenced by factors outside of the United States' control. So what should you do now that the prices of gas are so high? I have a couple solutions. So number one, you can use a gas rewards credit card. Many will offer great rewards for you on purchases of gas. Number two, you can also use an app to find the cheapest gas and discounts. Lastly, you can drive slower because driving slower is slightly more optimal for fuel efficiency. I know that these aren't really the best solutions, but every little bit can help in a tough economy. I hope you guys now have a better understanding of the American gas industry and how it works. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed the video.